Hi, and welcome to the Healthcare CEO Show, where you'll find actionable insights on healthcare leadership from the best and brightest in the industry. I'm your host, Daniel Fernandez. Let's get a pulse. With me today, I have Jeff Bevis. Jeff is the co-founder and former CEO of FirstLight Home Care. This fast-growing company has already expanded to 230 markets in 35 states in just 11 short years. Jeff is focused on the future growth of the home care industry and its increasing importance in the healthcare continuum. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Daniel. Great to be here.
As I just mentioned, 230 markets is a lot, and there's going to be quite a few questions that I'm going to ask that I know someone listening to this is going to want to know. But before we go down that rabbit hole, tell us a little bit about how FirstLight came to be.
Sure. Well, it was really a combination of personal experience and I think opportunity from an aging population. Yeah. I've been a caregiver myself 4 different times in my life, caring for an aging great-grandmother when I was a teenager, also a grandfather, a grandmother, and then most currently my own parents. But it was really a combination, Daniel, of seeing the opportunity in the industry, the real need for home care solutions and home care services. It's an industry that's been around for quite a while, but just felt like it was lacking a quality standard and a new and different service-focused approach. And I'd always wanted to be in business with my son, Devin. Okay. So we decided with just our initial focus 11 years ago that we would jump in and start FirstLight Home Care from scratch and try to leverage that experience and create a new and different service and brand level in the industry.
That's amazing. So you've had all of this time to work hand in hand with your son. I think that's an amazing story there.
It's been awesome. We originally thought we were going to be small business owners, but just with my career in franchising previously, we decided that really being a franchisor and creating an entire brand would be even more exciting. So that's the approach we took.
Let's talk a little bit more about that topic, the franchisee model. Obviously, I think it's 230 markets plus or something to that effect. How did this you talked about how the idea came to be, but what were maybe some of the earlier stage challenges in turning into something that you could franchise and then, of course, scale?
Sure. Well, I think in any franchise system, in home care or any other industry, one of the biggest challenges, of course, is finding the right people to join the brand, adopt the philosophy, adopt the culture as franchise owners. So I think one of our biggest challenges initially was to find the right people. How do we find them? Where do we find them? And kind of create that whole process system to evaluate people having interest. Because initially we had about 300 inquiries a month. So from a franchise standpoint, that was quite a challenge to try to cull through all those people. So I think one of the first challenges was really how do we create the process, kind of create the parameters and the standards that we wanted to establish for someone who wanted to become a FirstLight Home Care franchise owner. And then once you create that initial standard, just trying to be consistent and stick to those standards and not cut corners. It gets exciting, especially as you start gearing up. And to your question about scaling, Daniel, so you start thinking, well, maybe if we take a shortcut or cut a corner and we can add more markets faster, then that's something we really tried to guard against.
Got it. So scaling at a controlled, factor as opposed to just kind of growing out of control.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. And that is, how do you take something that is so wonderful, so magical as you've sort of created with your son, and then how do you replicate that? What are the tips and tricks there to take something that's so beautiful and then replicate it time and time again?
Yeah, great question, because it's really hard. And you have to, of course, kind of keep reinforcing this every step of the way, like every week, every month, every quarter, every year. Okay. Because again, you can't afford, I think if you're really trying to build a great brand or a great company, you can't afford to kind of let your guard down or, drop that overall standard. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but I think it was very much the continual focus on people. We just continually focused on the people as franchise owners, helping them hire the right people as managers and caregivers, and then who we hired as a support team too.
Got it. Do you think that the focus on people is what allows the culture to thrive across as many markets as you've kind of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it was the focus on people, sticking to your standards, not taking or making shortcuts, continually trying to evolve. We were very happy those first couple of years, but we also recognized we need to continually change and evolve and keep improving and looking for ways that we can improve and be open to those suggestions from franchise owners all around us, who many of them were coming from great backgrounds out of corporate America. Most had not been in business for themselves before, but I think you just have to be open to all those suggestions and kind of evolution too.
Got it. And I mean, 11 years, while not a long period of time, is an eternity in terms of technology, right?
It is.
Were there any things that you sort of used along the way to maybe help in that scaling?
Oh, yes, very, very much so. In the early going, we were the first company in home care to be totally web-based. So this is back in 2010. Now it's almost automatic, but all of our entire technology platform was all web-based. So any place that you had internet access, you could get in and look at your staffing, your scheduling, your financial system, your business metrics and analytics. But the downside of that is we had to keep continuing to look at ways to keep beefing that up and kind of staying out in front of the rest of the industry, and also to be able to deliver kind of a new and different technology experience that was an efficiency and a productivity benefit to the franchise owners. So yes, I would agree. I mean, I think even now after 11 years, the technology continues to evolve and really even a more rapid rate. Certainly one of the byproducts of our pandemic year last year, I think we took some major leaps from a technology standpoint because we pretty much had to.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a great point, right? Because of the pandemic, do you think there's going to be more of a demand from not only just, patients, but maybe even your own team members as well, who are having to adapt to all of these new technologies and changes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think in the home care industry, especially telehealth, remote patient monitoring are absolutely going to be front and center in probably 2021 even more, but certainly in the years to come, even faster.
Tell us a little bit about remote patient monitoring, because we haven't ever covered that in the past.
Well, it's essentially kind of the new and improved telehealth mechanism. So it's where you have a combination of say like a nurse call center or a home health support center, and then you have peripherals in the home where the client or where the family is, who with the connection to the nurse call center can take their vital signs, make sure they're weighing themselves on a daily basis, and downloading those vitals, downloading that personal health information back to the nurse call center. So it's monitoring the patient without having them go into an ER or to an office visit, and it's much more efficient. And I think it will be eventually even much more personable to the client. It's not the face-to-face, it's not a house call, the old doctor house call, but it's almost the next best thing. And it enables you to be able to see and check in on more patients and clients faster.
Nice. I love it. And I'm sure that your caregivers are probably loving some of these new changes as well.
Yes, it's definitely a learning curve for the caregivers, but it's a combination of that personal touch and now new additional technology to really improve care overall.
And speaking of caregivers, industry is not historically known for retention. Let's just say that, right?
Right.
Are you able to maintain your labor force? And if so, are there any tips you could share with?
Gosh, yeah, that's another really key factor, because labor force, I think, is probably the single biggest factor holding back the growth of the industry.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of lack of demand. There is plenty of demand.
Okay.
We have to find more quality caregivers faster. So, and I don't think there's any secret sauce. It's a combination of a lot of different things that kind of keeps that retention high and the turnover low. Much of that is really appreciating the caregivers, building loyalty with the caregivers, helping them develop additional training skills. And as simple as that may sound, that's really hard, has been hard for us as an industry to execute and to consistently maintain across the board.
That makes perfect sense. Is it because is there almost so there's a shortage of caregivers? Is it because there are so many people competing for those caregivers right now, or?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. During the pandemic, we thought we would see a little more availability, quite honestly, not to, take advantage of other people's misfortune, but we thought with people being on furlough from hospitality and food and restaurants, that would free up more potential labor. It just hasn't been the case. But I think it is a matter of really helping people better understand the role of a caregiver, how rewarding it can be, how purposeful it can really be, how it's not a dead-end job. I think, it gets painted a little bit sometimes as being a very low pay, no benefit, no future type of a occupation. And I think, again, in the right companies, it can be the total opposite. It can be really a profession that people can grow in for decades. And certainly with the growth of the home care industry, there are decades of growth ahead with all types of positions. And if people start as a caregiver, they know the industry, know the service, know the business very, very well. They can really have a great career that increases their compensation too.
And, let me just touch on that. You just mentioned decades of growth and the future of senior care. Let's talk a little bit about that. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, all baby boomers will be age 65 or older by 2030. And they're retiring at large rates. I think it's like 10,000 a day or something.
Yeah, or higher, right?
Or higher. Are we as a country even equipped to handle that?
I think the short answer today is no. Okay. I think we're getting better equipped to handle it, and with things like new Medicare Advantage supplemental benefit plan programs that now do cover personal care services. Yeah. Prior to 2019, that was not the case. So we're starting to see governmental programs, healthcare programs, and offerings that are designed to serve an increasing senior marketplace. But it's not enough yet. So that's where I think telehealth, remote patient monitoring, some of these other technologies combined with new healthcare offerings, hopefully will be able to help us catch up or get out in front of it. But I think the short answer right now is no. So hopefully some things will be changing in the next year, or even years ahead, to help us cope with that by 2030, as you said.
Yeah. Do you feel as if COVID may have just presented an opportunity? Because I feel as if there are more conversations being had today about seniors than there have in the past, or, whether it be looking for ways to protect our family members and so on. It's obviously thrust senior care, to the forefront of a lot of conversations here. Do you think that will help? Yes. I think, again, not to, draw advantage of someone else's misfortune, but yes, I think the pandemic has really jettisoned home care to the front and center in the healthcare continuum. Much greater recognition in the last 12 months from hospitals and physician networks and home health and especially senior living
communities too, who have, really taken on the chin and obviously struggled in many ways because of the pandemic challenges. Yes, I think home care now is going to have maybe even a more prominent seat at the table, and then coordinate, collaborate with different other players in the healthcare continuum to really ensure that services are now focused in the home, not in the hospital or not in a physician's office.
And this is another great thing. Our CEO recently wrote an article for Home Care Magazine, and she shared a statistic stating that nearly 66% of senior living facilities could close their doors in 2021 due to COVID-19 cost. You believe this would cause a new surge in demand for home health, especially if some of these facilities close?
I do. And I would agree with that statistic and that forecast completely. I think we saw it through 2020, and we're still seeing it really come about here now, even early 2021. Many of the nursing homes and the senior living communities, the facilities just took it on the chin continually for so many months through 2020 because of COVID that they just can't recover now from a financial standpoint. So it is, I think, also forcing the consumer, or has forced the consumer, to really think twice about putting their loved one or having them themselves go into a facility. Right or wrong, true or false, they have a consumer perception now that a facility is not the place to be if there was another pandemic, another surge. So it has really, again, refocused even more on home care, but it's also increased, I think, the collaboration, Daniel, of home care and senior living to work together.
Okay.
And maybe is a bit of a lifeline, for lack of a better term, for senior living. So if they can now think about offering home care services as well as services in their facility, maybe that's a way for them to hedge this moving forward.
Yeah, I think we would call that co-opetition.
That's right. Probably so.
We're dealing with an aging population here, but at an enormous rate. But other countries have had to deal with this as well, and in some aspect, maybe even before us. Are there any lessons that we could learn from other countries, or are there any other countries that have had to deal with an aging population?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think U.S. is easily in the second tier. We're not in the top 5, top 6 oldest countries in the world as a percentage, as you may know. Japan, China, Canada is older as a percentage. Their overall population, they have more of an over 65 population as a percentage than we do in the U.S. So yeah, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We can really learn from other countries. I think the Scandinavian countries, to answer your question, have a great model and probably are one that we should try to emulate more. I don't know that we can do it exactly the same because our healthcare systems are a little bit different, but they've done a great job. Going back 20 years ago, they were seeing that shift at that time of the aging population. So they've adopted more kind of community-centered home care or home units to keep services on a local level at a home care basis, and then keep the costs of healthcare down too. So I think there are some learnings we can take, especially from the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah, that you just reminded me of a quote. I think it's the only thing new in history is the history you don't know.
There you go.
And there's so many lessons, like to your point, that we can learn from abroad, from other countries that have already had to go through this. We jump to the future, 5-10 years from now. What do you think home care looks like?
I think it will be dramatically different. I think you're going to see tremendous change in the home care industry in the next 3 to 7 years. Much greater use of technology, much higher standards of care. I think you'll actually see fewer companies. We're already seeing some consolidation in the industry.
Okay.
Some of that was occurring before COVID. Now COVID has accelerated that as well. I think you're going to see fewer players, fewer companies in 3, 5, 7 years. Doesn't necessarily mean that the services will be any harder to get or any less convenient. I think services will be more convenient for the reasons we've already talked about, because everything is moving to the home environment. But I think you're going to see stronger players, fewer players, more technology, much greater focus on standards of care, and higher retention of caregivers. Almost like a reckoning, Daniel, of, wow, we've got to do a better job recruiting, hiring, training, retaining caregivers to serve this aging population.
Yeah. How about on the side of customer satisfaction or client satisfaction? Any standards you see kind of coming to the forefront over the next few years?
Very much so. One of our hallmarks at FirstLight Home Care has been we were the first home care company to literally measure client satisfaction in every office every quarter. And we've done that for 11 years. And our intent was to create a quality standard for the entire industry. And I think, fortunately, as an industry now, in fact, our industry trade group, Home Care Association of America, has now created a new subcommittee just to focus on creating a new standard of care and new client satisfaction metrics and other operating metrics too that can really lift the entire industry. So I'm excited to see that type of development. And I think we have all the players in the industry, large and small technology companies too, who are all in favor of creating those types of higher standards.
I think it's safe to say that at FirstLight, the future is bright. There's a lot ahead. In closing, I have a few questions. These are some of my favorite questions to ask guests.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite book?
I'm a big fan of the Good to Great series from Jim Collins. Good to Great was the first, and then Built to Last. And kind of showing my age, but I also was really impacted by a book called The Goal by Elihu Goldratt back in 1984. Not to sound like George Orwell, Daniel, but those two books have really helped me from a kind of different, unique perspective into the business world and servant leadership too.
I love that. I'm going to order that second one. I have Good to Great. I think it's an excellent book. Favorite quote?
I've always appreciated, since I was a young kid, there is no I in team. And I always understood it came from John Wooden, the infamous UCLA basketball coach. I understand that it really came from Peter Drucker, that we all think of and know of as just a business whiz, but there is no I in team. I think that's very impactful and a great one to live and work by.
I love that. Obviously, 2020 wasn't the year any of us could have anticipated. What has 2020 taught you personally?
Oh, it's taught me several things. A lot of great lessons, quite honestly. No real regrets, but some great lessons. I think the resiliency of people has come front and center. I think, we saw caregivers, franchise owners in the FirstLight system just manage through a phenomenal challenge with the pandemic, far beyond what I ever could have imagined as far as being resilient. It also, I think, reinforced the trust or knowing those around you and just making doubly sure that every member of your team is somebody that you can count on and they can count on you, and really trying to walk that talk, live that every single day. Even more so, I think, pre-2020, we think about teams and who was on our team and what team we were on. But boy, I just think 2020 really, for me personally, reinforced the importance of knowing who's really on the team, who's really believing in you, and who you're really believing in too.
I love that. Final closing thoughts. What would you like to tell the person that's listening to this, healthcare executive, potential caregiver, MD who's running his own practice? Any information, advice you want to share with them?
Sure. I think you can never dream too much. And I don't think there's any limit to what we're really capable of other than what we just have in our own mind. So I would just encourage the MD running his own practice, her own practice, the caregiver, CEO of any other healthcare company to dream big, shoot for the stars. I think anything is possible, and just try to surround yourself with great people.
I absolutely love that. And I think that's the perfect way to end the show on a positive note. Very inspiring. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Healthcare CEO Show. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for more insights from the top. Until next time, lead boldly and care deeply. See you on the next episode.